Hey YouTube, it's Prep for Life. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the basics of emergency preparedness by talking about food storage. Again, we're not planning for the zombie apocalypse just yet. We're not talking about the end of the world. What can you and your family do to start with a 72-hour supply and build from there without breaking the bank and without drastically changing what you do on a day-to-day basis? So let's get to it. All right, so when I was young, we didn't have a whole lot of options as far as food storage. Growing up, basically our only options, because I know my parents like to have a little food on hand, we had wheat, we had pinto beans, maybe some rice, powdered milk. It was always kind of a nightmare scenario if, the lights ever went out. How were we going to survive? I know as kids we were kind of freaked out about that. Nowadays, we live in kind of a really cool time. So what you're looking at right here is a couple of different freeze-dried options that my wife and I have picked up over the years. And again, we're not talking about trying to get some kind of bunker together or being prepared for some kind of zombie apocalypse. Again, we're just looking at the initial 72-hour period, that 3 days, which most people have to kind of last on their own until emergency services arrive after a natural disaster. So what you're seeing here, these two on the right, these are basically options that we've picked up at our emergency supply place. I know a lot of companies have sprung up over the last few years offering freeze-dried food. So for example, the one here on the right-hand side, this is a 6-person 72-hour kit. You're looking at 228 servings is what they say. A couple of different mixed things. The one in the middle is pretty similar. You've got a 200 adult serving package with a 20-year shelf life. Now, the reason that we've gone with a couple of these is mobility, and we're going to talk about mobility here coming up in other episodes when we're discussing go bags, bug out bags, call them whatever you want, kind of mobile 72-hour kits. These are an awesome option. If you ever have to leave your house in a time of an emergency, these would be great because you grab your go bag and you grab this pail and you're kind of set. You're ready to rock and roll. Another option that we've really liked over the last few years is these Mountain House Backpacker's Kitchen. There's some really cool options. It's not this bland stuff that our parents were raised on. You're talking about teriyaki chicken, spaghetti, lasagna. I mean, there's some really cool meals in there. And kind of zooming in, you'll see we've got 3 breakfast skillets, 3 beef stroganoff, 3 rice and chicken, 3 spaghetti with meat sauce, and even an apple crisp. It's 13 pouches. 34 servings because each pouch is a little bit more than a serving. So it can actually feed a couple of people. I'll grab this rice and chicken, and you can see these are a really cool packaging design. You'll notice they're really thin. What happens is you actually tear off the top, you pour in some boiling water, seal it up again. It's got a little bit of a Ziploc, and you let it sit for just a couple of minutes, and then it's ready to go. It couldn't be simpler. And again, it ties back into the water storage that we've been talking about in the previous episode. As long as you have enough water on hand, really easy to heat that water up, let's say over a fire, if you don't have your stove available. Just really, really handy option here. You'll notice on the Mountain House, you're looking at a 9-year shelf life, whereas some of these others, they're boasting a 20-year shelf life. It comes down to how they were preserved, what the ingredients are, things like that. One thing that's important to remember is that we're also talking about versatility. What I mean by that is that these Mountain House are really cool for camping, backpacking. It's not something that you just have to save up. These two that are sealed, I'm probably not going to be opening those and rotating them like I'd like to because I want them to remain sealed. I want them to stay an option for a long time because they're kind of part of my go bag strategy. Whereas the Mountain House, I can pop those open. We bought this box over here, I believe, at Costco, and we've bought a couple over the years. So in terms of rotation, I just pop it open. I'll take 1 or 2 when I go out on a camping trip, and they're really handy to have. Again, once you've got your 72-hour stock on hand, then you start progressing from there. You really start building. When you go to the store, you find a sale on certain items you know that your family likes to eat, you buy a few extra. You kind of start building out a pantry. And you'll notice, It's really just extra groceries. And the key is, what is your family going to eat? Are there comfort foods? Do you want to pick up a couple of extra things of brownie mix? What lasts a long time? And the rotation is important. So you'll notice we love Nesquik in our family. So whenever we run out upstairs, we come down and grab one, and my wife writes Nesquik on the shopping list, and we kind of rotate through, so we're always a few ahead. Some people find this interesting or crazy, depending on who you're talking to. When I was laid off at one point, we went a good maybe 60, almost 90 days without a job, and we were able to expand or last for that period of time and make our money go farther because we had this food storage available. So the key consideration is really rotating your stock here, and then storage space. Where can you set up a pantry like this when the time comes? And when you start looking at prolonging that food storage, some of the items that are really important are, again, things that your family's going to eat, but also kind of sticking to some of the basic food groups. A lot of the the professionals and people that have been doing this a long time, they talk about kind of the major groups here. You need your fats. That's where the peanut butter comes from. You need some protein, which I like to throw in Spam, but I mean, canned meat is fantastic. And grains, so you'll notice the flour mix here, the buttermilk pancake mix, the lentils in terms of grains, kind of mixing it up so it's not just, you're not living on rice or trying to do that in an emergency scenario. That's just not healthy. I kind of say the Spam tongue-in-cheek because Spam is actually not as bad as you'd think. There's a reason that it was a staple through the war and got people through. But with each of these things, I've tested them on my children. Spam, I kind of realized, look, it's got a good shelf life, even though we're going to kind of rotate through it. Funny enough, it's more expensive in my opinion than it should be, but it's good stuff. You actually try it. If you thin slice it, fry it up. I've fed it to the kids on multiple occasions, and they really like it. But in terms of the sodium value, the protein, it's actually a really good, interesting prepper food. Now, one thing I did want to point out while we're talking about it is again, some more of this freeze-dried. You'll notice that my wife actually marked it, like I said in the previous video, with a Sharpie, just to kind of talk about when it was purchased. This is how varied and what an amazing selection you can get from some of these companies. Let me actually show the brand here. This is something local to Utah, Emergency Essentials. I mean, you're talking about, she's got a thing of freeze-dried limes in there, whole blueberries. Again, as long as you're not trying to break the bank or go into debt trying to get all this stuff, these are things that you can just buy, maybe take a little bit out of each paycheck and go and purchase some of these once in a while, build up that storage over time, and then again start rotating. I also bring this up because it comes into play with dietary needs. If you have a special diet that you need to be mindful of, there's so many more options these days than there used to be in terms of gluten-free, diabetic diets, nut-free, things like that. Okay guys, so that's how you do it. Go slow. Remember, you don't have to do this all at once. Focus on that first 72 hours and then build from there. As you go to the grocery store, grab items that are on sale, things that you like. Just do it a little bit at a time and stock them away. Secondly, remember to grab items that your family actually likes to eat. There's no point in stocking rice and beans in large quantities unless you actually like eating them and you feel like there are recipes you could prepare. Plan around dietary restrictions. So if you know somebody in your family can't eat gluten, has nut allergies, has diabetes that they need to plan around, again, nowadays is a great time to be able to plan for those things because we have so many options available. Comfort foods. I mentioned brownie mix earlier because it stores really, really well, and believe me, that would be a comfort food for our family should we be going through a natural disaster and a crisis. And then lastly, focus on mobile. I mentioned freeze-dried foods. They're really easy to prepare and they're mobile. So they can be put in a mobile 72-hour kit, taken with you, and prepared relatively simply. And we're going to be talking about those mobile kits, those go bags, next week. I hope you found this video useful. Please remember to subscribe so you can be updated whenever we release a new one. And remember to share on Facebook and Twitter.